I'm the middle sibling of 3. I have 2 brothers. They both grew up as scouts. My older brother made it to Eagle Scout. My little brother quit sometime in Boy Scouts. But for whatever reason, my parents never forced me to become a scout when I was a kid. Which is weird because I remember always being really jealous of my older brother Scott when my mom would bring me along to the Pinewood Derby contests and celebrations and such. But the thing that I was always the most jealous that I missed out on were the campouts when the troops would go out into the wilderness and camp out for a whole weekend. I went along for the drive once or twice and I saw them all setting up doing campfires and such, but being younger and also not part of the troop, I don't think I was allowed to stay. So I'd go home with my parents. My jealousy of these campouts was mainly towards my older brother because I was growing up watching him prepare for these camping trips. Before every trip, he'd be given a tent to take home and practice setting up in the backyard. Even though I was only like 7 or 8, I remember so clearly how eager I was when I hatched the idea to do a little backyard camping. Basically, we set up the tent in the backyard and sleep in it overnight. To my little mind, that was the most exciting idea ever. Also, our backyard wasn't really a traditional backyard. Our childhood house was in a very spacious neighborhood, where yards just kind of all meshed together and there weren't many fences, more so large patches of trees and brush separating yards, which added to the camping feel. Our backyard was also huge, and we had a fire pit, so our parents played along and set up the fire pit in our backyard for us so we could get the full camping experience. My little brother roasted marshmallows with us too, but our parents weren't going to let him sleep in the tent. He was only like 4 at the time and it wasn't a good idea. And no, he wasn't a scout yet. Obviously, he was 4. After it got a little late, our parents brought him in and told us it was time to start getting ready for sleep. At this time in my life, the Game Boy SP was the handheld console. So, after getting into our sleeping bags, Scott and I whipped out our Game Boys and played our respective games. I was playing Super Mario Bros. 2, a game I was obsessed with yet could never beat as a child. After getting a little more tired though, I turned to my side and tried to sleep. But I remember not being able to sleep. Like I was tired but restless. Maybe because I'd never slept in a sleeping bag before. And quite frankly, it wasn't comfortable. A lot of time passed, and I mean a lot, before I finally nodded off. And then I woke up probably confused about where I was at first, not recognizing my surroundings. I remember looking around the dark tent and then noticing something. Scott was gone. His sleeping bag was empty. The tent zipper was closed though. He must have went inside because he couldn't sleep. I was suddenly too scared to be in the tent alone, so I got up and unzipped the tent. But before crawling out, I did a little innocent peek outside simply because I was too scared to run out through the backyard without checking if the ghost was clear. But it was not. I saw someone sitting by the fire pit in the darkness. It wasn't Scott, it was a grown man. He was facing the tent, and surely he had to have seen me. I gasped and zipped the tent back up and crawled back into my sleeping bag as if that piece of cloth was any form of protection. I stayed completely still inside my sleeping bag. The tent was almost completely dark, just a faint gray from the moonlight coming through the fabric. I don't know what was going through my mind at that point, but I do know that I wanted to call out Dad, just hoping that it was my dad, but I knew it wasn't. I got a look at the man, even just briefly, and if it were my dad, he'd have acknowledged me poking my head out of the tent. And that's when I heard the chair by the fire pit shift. I was bricks, hoping the man didn't get up. And if he did, that he wasn't coming towards the tent. But I could see a shadow now on the other side of the tent, blocking some of the moonlight. He was right outside somehow. I thought if I didn't move, maybe he would think the tent was empty. Then I heard the zipper very slowly dragging downward. It only moved a few inches. The opening was small, but it was enough. I couldn't help it. I turned my head just slightly. There's a small gap at the bottom of most tents where the zipper doesn't fully seal. I had never noticed it before that night, and I was pressed against that gap. Just one eye looking directly at me. I could see the white of it in the dark. I couldn't even scream at first, not for a few seconds at least, because I was paralyzed. Then the eyes squinted a bit, as if the person was smiling a smile that I couldn't see. The zipper moved another inch, and that's when I finally screamed. I scrambled backwards, kicking out of my sleeping bag, knocking into the tent poles. I heard footsteps immediately take off through the yard. Our back porch light flipped on, which I could see through the tent fabric. My dad burst out the back door yelling. I could hear him running across the grass. By the time he reached the fire pit area, whoever it was already gone. My parents called the police, of course. I don't remember what happened after my parents talked to the cops. I know I went to my parents' room with my mom, and eventually the police did their thing, likely searching the immediate area. It was an absolute nightmare. I slept in my parents' bed that night. I was emotionally scarred for a while. Just as things might have been going back to normal, I think it was a few weeks to a month later. This part is what really hammers the nail in the coffin for this experience being something I can never forget. I went to Catholic school, and during lunch, we'd have a short recess in the schoolyard, which was all concrete. The far end of the schoolyard was fenced off and looked towards the street. We were playing some game, maybe red light, green light or something. This part I genuinely don't remember. All I know is I had to run to the fence to be considered safe from whatever the threat in the game was. And while I was on the fence next to some other kids, mind you, a man says "hey" from the other side of the fence. I turn, and it's a man asking me for directions to some place I don't even remember. I said, "I don't know. We weren't even supposed to talk to strangers outside of the schoolyard." Then he said, "Your name's Chris, right?" And that moment is implanted in my brain. His voice, the look on his face, and my heart dropping. I said no, lying to him. He then smiled and said, "You don't remember me, do you?" And at this point, I ran towards one of the recess chaperones and pointed over at the fence. But the man was gone. One of the kids next to me told me he saw the man too. The recess ladies called the recess in short, and the school called my parents. I was sure it was that man from the backyard. I was taken home early that day. I know my parents were so sick and worried after this. It was a hellish month. We lived in such a nice area too. And to almost be chased out of the neighborhood because of this was just a nightmare. After months of me being under tight supervision from my parents, things went back to normal. I can't express enough though how much it still pains me in my chest thinking about how I could be dead today if that man had somehow successfully taken me. And it makes me sick wondering if he was ever successful in whatever he was trying to do with someone else. I grew up in Salem, Oregon, a quaint little small-town feeling place. I moved out when I was 21, buying my first house about 50 miles outside of Salem. I furnished my first house with a mix of stuff for my parents, their friends, and a bunch of items I found on online marketplaces and apps. Driving a Ford Raptor at the time made lugging stuff around very easy. One day, on Facebook Marketplace, I found a listing selling a bunch of appealing items. The ones that caught my eye were a cream-colored sectional couch that looked pristine and a Cannondale mountain bike. I didn't have a bike at the time, and given where my house was, having one was perfect for exercise. The other items on the listing didn't interest me much. The listing itself felt like a digital yard sale. I contacted the seller, and we did the usual back and forth. He was pretty short and straight to the point, but surprisingly easy to negotiate with. He agreed to a slightly lower price and told me I could pick the items up later that night. Days are long in Oregon during the summer, so I would still have sunlight. I figured I'd have to make a couple of trips for the sectional couch due to its size. I set out on my way to the house. The address was right on the coast. Checking the satellite view on the map confirmed it was a house, and in the backyard there was a literal drop-off to the ocean. I thought, no wonder these people are selling all this stuff for so cheap. With that kind of money, I wondered why they weren't just giving it away. The closer I got, the nicer the properties became. Finally, I turned onto the last road before the driveway. It was a long road lined with woods on both sides, with occasional driveways leading to cliffside mansions. Eventually, I reached the turnoff. It was a dirt driveway through trees. About 10 seconds into driving down it, the road opened to a massive clearing. The driveway went up a slight incline to the house at the top of the hill. I parked next to an older sedan that did not match the house at all. It looked like a Mercury Sable. The house looked like it belonged to a millionaire, but the car was a piece of... I approached the front door but noticed a yellow post-it note. Doorbell broken. Please use back door. Strange, because I could have just knocked, but I obeyed. As I walked down the porch, I messaged the seller on Messenger that I was arriving and would go around back. I walked around the side of the house, checking windows, but all blinds were closed. The backyard was incredible. It overlooked the Pacific Ocean. I walked up to the sliding glass door at the back, but blinds blocked my view inside. I knocked on the glass once, waited, and knocked again. Looking at my phone, I checked for his response. None. I sat in one of the chairs on the deck, staring at the sunset and the ocean. The view was surreal. I kept checking Messenger, but still no response. Double-checking the address, I confirmed I was in the right place, and the note on the front door validated it. If he was in the shower or busy, I decided to walk to the cliffside for a picture of the view. While walking, I daydreamed about one day affording a place like this. As I returned to the house, I froze. Every window now had its blinds open, and at each window stood a person completely still, like statues. I couldn't tell if they were real or mannequins. I walked closer, and the thought, nope, I've seen enough, hit me when I saw every face smiling. I grabbed my things and headed to my car without looking at the front windows. Reversing down the driveway, I glanced at the house. The front door was open, and a person stood on the porch with hands in pockets, watching me drive away. I didn't wait to see more and left immediately. The seller never responded to my messages. Curious, I knocked on the neighbor's door. A man named Tom answered. I explained the disturbing situation, pressing for info on his neighbor. Tom was shocked. He said his friend hardly ever stayed in town and wouldn't set up an elaborate prank. He called his neighbor Jim right away. Tom explained to Jim, I have someone at my door saying you invited him over, but you scared him with the windows and people standing around. After a pause, Jim replied, What are you talking about? I explained everything, from the Facebook ad to my arrival to the people at the windows. Jim was concerned. He hadn't been home all week. I described every detail, including the man on the porch and the sedan. Jim asked for the Facebook listing, but it was removed. I sent him the profile details, which were now blank. He thanked me and promised to give it to the police. Later, Jim told me the police found nothing stolen. The blinds were closed again, no sedan in the driveway, and all 3 doors were unlocked. The scariest part for me was the people standing at the windows smiling, trying to frighten me. I still wonder why they wanted me in the backyard. I'm just glad I left when I did. I live with my parents in Murraysville, Pennsylvania. My parents were gone one weekend, so I decided I was going to have a bunch of people over in the backyard for a mini pool party. We have a pool house and an in-ground pool back there. It's perfect for parties, even though I rarely get a chance to throw anything. The rest of the backyard is a little bit of grass and then the woods behind the pool house. It's a very private backyard. Usually, you'll see what I mean soon. So, the little party I planned was for Saturday night. Earlier that day, I was setting up outside. It was a little cloudy out, but since it was going to be a night party, that didn't really matter. The woods behind the pool house are pretty big. They go at least half a mile back before they reach another backyard. So, there should really be no one walking through them. It's also our property. There are no trails or any reason for anyone to be back there. I was bringing out folding tables for beer pong and refreshments and setting them up when I heard a cough come from the woods. It was clearly a slow throat-clearing kind of cough, like someone trying to get something out of their throat, and it was definitely a man. I froze with the table still in my hands. I just stood there listening. The wind was barely moving the leaves, so the sound carried really clearly. It came from just inside the tree line, not deep in the woods, close enough that whoever made it could definitely see me. I scanned the tree line and called out, "Who is that?" There was no answer, not even any movement, no footsteps or branches snapping or anything. That almost made it worse. I got that feeling in my chest like I was being watched, like someone was standing perfectly still just behind a tree. I stood there for maybe 20 seconds just listening. The longer I stood there, the more uncomfortable I felt. Eventually, I just grabbed the rest of the stuff and brought it back inside for a bit. I didn't want to just stand out there alone anymore. I called my good friend Mark to come over early and help me set up. I decided not to mention the cough. I didn't want to sound paranoid before the party even started. Mark came over around 6 p.m. He brought some drinks and helped me finish setting up. I kept glancing at the woods while we were out there, but everything looked normal. Nothing moved. If someone had been there earlier, they were gone. The rest of my friends started showing up around 7 to 8. At the peak of the party, there were at least 20 people. Nothing insane, but it was a good time. There was music playing, people in the pool, lights around the patio on. With that many people there, the woods didn't feel creepy anymore. A couple times during the night, I caught myself looking toward the tree line though. I don't even know why. I guess that cough just stuck with me. Things started dying down around midnight, and by 1 a.m. the last of the guests had left. I figured I would leave the mess to clean up for tomorrow. I was tired and ready for bed. Before going inside, I did one last slow sweep of the backyard. I walked around the pool, checked behind the pool house, looked toward the woods again. Everything seemed normal. The water in the pool was still, the lights reflected off of it. No one was out there. I locked the backsliding door and went upstairs to brush my teeth and go to bed. I was in bed scrolling on my phone for maybe half an hour before putting it down. It probably took another half hour of laying there trying to sleep when I heard a splash. Not a small one, not like something falling in. It sounded exactly like someone jumping into the deep end. My eyes opened immediately. I held still, listening. A few seconds later, I heard the sound of someone swimming. Literal strokes through the water. My first thought was maybe someone from the party stayed behind as a joke, or they just woke up drunkenly. But I knew everyone who came. This wasn't any of them. I checked my phone, and it was 2 a.m. I got out of bed and walked slowly to the window that overlooks the backyard. I didn't turn on any lights in my room. I didn't want whoever was out there to see me before I saw them. When I looked down at the pool, I saw there was a guy swimming calmly from one end to the other. First, I tried to recognize him. I knew all 20 or so people who came over. This wasn't any of them. I leaned closer to the glass. The pool lights lit up his face just enough for me to know for sure I had never seen him before. I yelled out the window, "Who is that?" The swimming stopped immediately. He looked up slowly toward my window. Even from that distance, I could tell he wasn't confused or startled. He just stared. Then he started moving toward the shallow end. He climbed out of the pool, and that's when I saw how tall he was. He stood there dripping wet for maybe 2 seconds just looking toward the house. I expected him to run away. Instead, he started walking toward the sliding door, not running or hesitating, just walking fast and direct like he already knew where he was going. Almost in a march. I yelled again, "Hey, who is that?" He didn't respond. I heard the sliding door downstairs open. I know I locked it, I'm positive I did, but I heard it slide open. Then it slid shut. I ran to my bedroom door and locked it. That's when I noticed how much my hands were shaking. I grabbed my phone and texted Mark asking him if he noticed anyone stay behind before leaving, but I didn't wait for a response. I immediately called 911. I whispered into the phone that there was an intruder in my house. I gave my address as quietly as I could, then I heard the footsteps. They were slow, wet footsteps on hardwood. I could hear the slight stick of his feet lifting off the floor. He wasn't rushing, nor was he searching randomly. He was walking directly toward the stairs. Each step on the stairs creaked one at a time. He reached the top. The hallway floor outside my room creaked. He stopped right outside my bedroom door. I could hear water dripping onto the floor. Then the handle moved. He tried opening it once, then twice, then a third time, harder each time. When he realized it was locked, there was a long pause. The 911 operator was saying something, but I had the phone set down. I could barely focus on what she was saying. Then the guy knocked on the door. 3 slow knocks. I picked up the phone and put it on speaker. My voice was shaking, but I said loudly that I was on the phone with the police and they were on their way. There was another long pause. Then a man's voice from the other side of the door said very low and calm, "It's me. Open the door." He sounded like a grown man in his 30s. I said, "I know that I don't know you. Leave now." Then I heard him turn and walk away quickly. I heard his wet footsteps go back down the hallway, then down the stairs, and a few seconds later I heard the front door downstairs open and slam shut. I didn't move until the police arrived. When I finally went downstairs with them, there was a clear trail of water leading from the back door up the stairs all the way to the bedroom door. After searching the entire house, that was the only proof that he had ever been there. I texted everyone I invited asking if they stayed behind or noticed anyone else stay behind. Anyone who was still awake said no. The rest texted back in the morning saying no. It was a complete stranger. And I have a feeling that cough I heard in the woods earlier that day was that man. I don't know how he got the door unlocked. Maybe he slipped in during the party when people were going in and out. As for a motive, I have no idea. I just know that if I didn't wake up when I did, or if I opened that bedroom door, I don't know what he would have done.